It's the big clash in Paris for the EWC, the Esports World Cup 2026. We have Magnus Carlsen, the world number one, taking on Hans Niemann already. And Magnus is being asked by some of the volunteers there if he has the heart rate meter on his arm, and he has it there. You can see Magnus trying to focus in. It's a big game. Magnus did win the first round of 16. He beat Andrei Esipenko 1.5 and his opponent is Hans Niemann. He also won his first round in an intense Armageddon against Jan Nepomniachtchi. And here we have both the players ready now for the big fight. The games are set 10 minutes plus no increment here. Magnus representing Team Liquid, while Hans playing for the Indian team of Godlike. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop B5. Magnus is white. He plays the Rui Lopez. Hans, of course, very well prepped up. D3 played here. And now, in this position, B5 hitting the bishop. The bishop drops back to B3. Castles. A4 striking on the queen side. Bishop B7. And Magnus goes bishop to G5. Look, you can see Magnus there relaxing on his chair. He must be listening to some music as well. The main reason why they are wearing headphones is because there is a live crowd there. So they don't want to hear anything of that. Queen A8 taken. And now knight to C3 attacking the pawn. Well, a natural response is B4, but then knight D5 and white is already doing very well. So knight A5 played, attacking the bishop, giving up a pawn, takes, and you can see that in return for the extra pawn, white's structure is broken. Queen B8, defending the pawn, also looking at the knight. Knight comes back to C3. H6, bishop takes F6, bishop takes F6, and queen to C2 played. The queen jumps to A7, looking at this long diagonal, and we have B4 gaining space on the queen side. C6 played. Well, usually black's position should compensate here for the missing material. Takes, knight takes, but Magnus is playing this very carefully and calmly. He also understands that there is enough compensation for black, because look at this bishop, it's amazing, and this bishop can also get active at some point through here. Rook C8, pinning the knight. But on the other hand, remember, it's 10 plus 0. By the way, you can't take the pawn, the bishop is hanging, and that means that as the moves start happening, at some point you have to be careful. By the way, he plays H3, queen takes D3 now, rook D1, and you lose D6. So Magnus being very tricky. Bishop goes back to D8, and now the bishop wants to drop, come to B6, the diagonal that we were mentioning. So yes, this time control is very unique, right? Because the time control is essentially 10 plus 0, and what happens in this time control is that right now it all looks even, it looks great, but the moment the time starts to run low. By the way, D4 played by Magnus here. Queen A5, takes, the pawn is defended, rook D1. Then this extra pawn can become very dangerous. Bishop comes to B6. Hans Niemann is keeping the activity going. Knight jumps to D5, maybe not the best move. Queen, bishop takes D5, pawn takes D5. Magnus says, well, I have a strong pawn here, but now queen C5, excellent move, hitting the F2 pawn. And you can see Magnus there not happy because, you know, he didn't see that coming. Rook D2, maybe there's E4. Rook F1 is not the move you want to play happily. And you can see Hans Niemann and Magnus shaking his head there. E4 is a good idea. Knight e5. And maybe even something like rook b8 with the idea of queen f2, rook f2, bishop f2 and b3 is hanging. So some tactics there in the air. He goes rook e8. Here Magnus goes queen a4. Now attacks the rook. Well, mistakes are possible by both sides here. Rook d8 played. He jumps and picks the pawn. Queen takes d5. Magnus still keeps that extra pawn. Knight comes back to f3. Now the b pawn is very dangerous, but at the same time it's not far too advanced. Black still has a lot of pressure on f2, which means that the rook cannot come into the game. Queen e4, centralizing the queen, preparing to play pawn to b4. Now Magnus thinking about what to do next. Queen b5 by Hans Niemann. He puts his queen on a good square here. Looking at the b2 pawn, also looking at the rook here. And Magnus, well, he can push the pawn to b4, but then this pawn could become potentially a target. So queen c2, rook b8, trying to look at the b2 pawn, b3, just one step ahead. And now bishop to c5, rook b1, putting the rook behind the pawn so that it can be pushed. Bishop f8, and Magnus brings his queen up to e4. We have queen b6, g3 and bishop c5 now attacking the f2 point. Maybe there's rook b2 to be played. He comes back, bishop b4. So to make progress is not at all easy. King g2, queen b7, rook comes to d1, but you need patience. And this is what Magnus is really good at. He's playing all on the light squares. Hans doesn't trade. h4 now, queen d5, queen d3, offering a trade of queens. You don't want to trade, I guess, as black. You want to keep the pieces on the board. Queen c4 played. Now if you notice that it's not so easy to push the pawn. It's very well guarded. On the other hand, white is saying that I won't push the pawn. I'm just trying to feel the position. I'm coming in. Now slowly I have some attack on f7 point. Rook d3. My rook is coming in. This is just classic Magnus. And Hans Niemann, by the way, has kept excellent time on the clock. He has close to 2 minutes. Magnus has 2 minutes. Both of them down to 2 minutes. Rook e3. Queen b7. He offers the trade of queens. Magnus putting so much pressure on Hans, and Hans actually withstanding it. It feels like as if it's not an over the board game. It's actually their real life where both sides were trying to put pressure on each other. Finally the knight moves. Queen c5. And now what next? Rook f3, offering a trade of rooks. Declines it. Queen e8. What a move this is. These are the tactics which need to be seen. Rook d4, f7 is hanging. So queen d5, defending, pinning here. Knight f5. The knight jumps in. Now attacking the rook. Rook d7, h5, clamping down. Rook b7 and now b4. Because if you take here, then knight e7 is a checkmate. That's what Magnus is doing now. Some tactics. Queen d7. He takes, puts the rook on b3. Rook d5. Knight jumps back. And now rook b5 played. He goes knight c2 defending. Bishop e7. g4. King f8. f4. Starts pushing the king side pawns. f5 played by Hans. And Magnus says it's time to now change the character of the game. Both players moving fast. King e4, knight d4, and knight comes back to e2. Magnus has 55 seconds, Hans has 41. This is a very tough game, tough position to play under time trouble. Knight d3, but Hans is holding on bravely. This is still a draw. but I think he can get flagged here. Look at the speed at which they are playing. Knight b6 and a blunder finally. The reason for this blunder is that the king gets the g6 square. That's the problem. That's the big problem here. The king gets the g6 square, f6 comes in, knight takes f6, and Magnus is playing this brilliantly. He's coming in with his knight to f7, and he will get the pawn on h6. Hans Niemann resigns here. Magnus Carlsen wins. What a game this was by Magnus, showing true skills there. The move bishop a3 was a mistake because it allowed this maneuver with knight c4, knight e5, and knight d3, defending f4 and hitting c1 and allowing king g6. The defense was king f8, and the same line does not work there. Bishop d2, knight d3, and I just come king f7. You can't come into g6. So that was a miss for Hans, and it was a big moment for Magnus Carlsen. Okay, it's time for game 2 now. Hans Niemann must win with the white pieces. Not at all easy to win on demand against Magnus Carlsen, but well, you have to do it if you want to get the Armageddon, if you want to move to top 8. Magnus is the GOAT here, and you can see him there just closing his eyes. That's the EWC 2026 trophy. The players are ready. 10 plus 0. It's time to go. e4 by Hans. e5, Magnus going very solid. He just needs a draw to advance. Bishop b5. The winner would reach top 8. Now, knight f6, d3. Bishop comes to c5. He pushes his pawn to c3. Very similar structure to the last game, but the bishop was on e7 this time on c5. Hans pins the knight. The bishop goes back to unpin it, and notice how this is all very nice preparation, because if you take knight e5, there's knight e4, bishop e7, queen e7 hits the knight. So all prep. h3, d6, knight d2 played by Hans, and now maybe you just play h6 as Magnus. He's thinking. And he pushes the pawn to h6. Bishop comes back to e3. The bishop would definitely be better placed on this diagonal than come back to h4, g3. b5, bishop drops back to c2, and now pawn to d5, striking in the center. Maybe there's d4 coming in, castles, and if de, you take back with the pawn. So he goes d4, Magnus takes, bishop drops out, and I think that's a nice position here. Very nice position. Knight to b4, attacking the bishop and the pawn. Bishop b1, you don't want to give up your bishop, clearly, but he goes a3. I can't believe it that he gave up this bishop. Knight c2, queen c2. I mean, what was the problem with bishop b1? You could simply then kick the knight away. c5, a3, knight c6. This is a very fighting position. In fact, white would have great chances. But Hans goes a3, takes. Magnus plays c5, and now knight b3, attacking this pawn. But knight d7 defends it. Knight e5 played to attack here, and queen b6. Beautiful play by Magnus. Already Hans Niemann is worse. He goes rook c1. He attacks the c5 pawn one more time. And now comes the amazing move queen f6. This move, I'm sure, has been missed by Hans Niemann. So now you attack here and here. You can't play bishop h2. You simply lose a piece. So you have to take on d7. And after bishop d7, then, I mean, what have you got here? I have the bishop pair. f4 is hanging. It's not a pretty position here. He had to take. Bishop takes. I mean, this is a lovely move, queen f6. I'm a big fan of that move. These are the little moves which actually make someone win a game. bishop goes back to g3, and now simply rook a c8, angling for the c4 break. Knight comes back to d2, taking control of the square here, but I think you can still play c4. Magnus plays it, because if pawn takes pawn, knight takes, bishop b5, b3, the a3 pawn is hanging. It's insanely quick calculation by Magnus. Knight goes to f3, and now, well, he's attacking maybe the d4 pawn, maybe threatening to play e5, but Magnus now, boom, takes on h3. And his point, of course, if gh3, queen takes f3 is hanging. So e5 played. And now, excellent move, queen c6, eyeing the knight. If knight takes d4, queen g2 is a checkmate. So d takes c4 taken here by Hans Niemann. And b takes c4. Black is totally winning now. Queen d1. You simply have to find a very powerful move here. He goes bishop g4, which is a mistake. He should have played bishop g5, attacking the rook. You still can't take here because of g2 hanging. And if g takes h3, you have bishop c1. If you take here, your knight is hanging. And in case you move the rook, there's d3, and the rook is almost trapped there. So bishop g4 played. Knight takes pawn. Bishop d1. Magnus is like, hey, I just need a draw. Do you guys understand? There's no need to be very special here. Just plain normal natural chess. I don't need to win. c3. And when Magnus gets positions like this, he is an absolute beast, because he understands the dynamics very well. Rook c3, pawn takes, and now just rook c8 coming in to attack the c3 pawn. The a3 pawn is also loose. e6. Hans tries to activate his bishop on this diagonal. I'm not so sure if he's going to get too much out of this. fe6. Magnus takes here, and bishop e5. He defends the pawn, but now bishop takes a3 is possible. Rook c5 first, attacking the bishop. Bishop d4. He goes bishop d6. Can we take here? Takes, take here, take on a6, king f7. It's 3 versus 3. Well, Hans has some hopes because he has an outside passed pawn. Rook a2, rook b3, keeping the rook a little bit active by putting it on the third rank. h5, check. Rook h3, king f6, and check. Rook comes to b3, king f6, and h4. Magnus is even trying to press in this endgame. He has g5, and I think Hans Niemann doesn't have too many chances here. His rook is tied down, black's king is moving, e5, black's position is easy to play. You know, Magnus came to the day today not feeling so well. His health wasn't the best, as he mentioned, or at least he looked that way, but he manages to actually beat Hans Niemann here in this 2-game match. Rook e5, rook a3, everything is getting traded. h3 as well, check, king f5, and finally trades. And they're going to play, I guess, still some moves. Rook f3, 5. And finally, a rook trade and a draw has been gotten there for Magnus. He wins 1.5, and no handshake. He just moves away there. And Magnus moves to top 8. Hans Niemann falls down to the lower bracket. Hopefully he'll be able to win his games for the Godlike team and reach the top 8. For now, it's Magnus who's already in top 8, Firuza who's already in top 8, Hikaru Nakamura and Nodirbek Abdusattarov. These 4 players have already made it to the top. This match particularly was a very nice one for Magnus. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's hear what Magnus has to say.
Magnus, you came here as the defending champion. You beat Yesipenko, and then now, of course, you beat Hans Niemann as well. How would you assess your level today?
No, I certainly...
Oh, no worries. No choking in game.
I certainly was not at my best today, but I managed to mobilize, and yeah, for the first game against Yesipenko and the 2 games against Niemann, I managed to, get into fairly comfortable positions where I could sort of play fairly, quickly and rely mainly on intuition. So that helped me a lot. First game, of course, was a bit of a drawn-out affair, but it was very nice to be kind of on the better side of it all the way and being the one who was pushing for a win. And yeah, especially in this time format where time is running out as well, it's really difficult to hold when you're kind of just in a drawn position, but you cannot really force it. You just have to, you have to stay with the game, and then that's very difficult.
Okay, and Magnus, of course, you did win last year, and now you're into the playoffs. You have a day off. What will your prep look like tomorrow?
Probably sleep. No, I mean, I just today was about survival. It's really important for me to get that day off. I feel like if I had to play tomorrow, it would have been very tough. Now I feel like hopefully I can feel a little bit better in a couple of days, and I should be ready to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please get a round of applause for Magnus Carlsen, officially qualified for the playoffs. We're going to send things over to the studio to break everything down.